Yeah, and I know we heard the defense talking about how right off the bat they said Joseph Ryan killed Christine Banfield. That was their point. This next sound that I want you to hear about, they ask her about what Joseph's reaction was when he saw Brenden in the hallway standing there and yelling police. Let's take a listen.
Yeah.
What did he look like when he saw Brenden?
Shocked.
After Brenden shot Joe, did anyone say anything?
If anyone said anything?
Yeah, did anyone say anything in the room at that point?
Yeah, because Brenden ran to Christine. She was still on the floor, and I think that point she had seen me, and she said she had asked what you do to Brenden. I think regarding to that he shot Joe, and she said my name. She told me, Juliana, call 911.
And I think it's pretty obvious what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make sure that people feel that Joseph Ryan was still a victim here. Is that fair to say?
That he was still a victim, and that he was shocked. Otherwise, he was thinking he was coming there for a consensual encounter with a person who was there by herself. And that testimony that he was shocked when someone else was there, and obviously that a gunshot went off, and that he was shot, that's obviously a shocking situation for him. Pretty much setting up the prosecutor's theory that he was set up for this homicide. If you're the defense attorney, you're Brendan Banfield's attorney in this situation, what concerns do you have about that question being asked? I think that question being asked was problematic for the defense during the direct. It was something that hit me as being a real problem. But as the cross-examination started to unfold, I think that became less of a problem. But that was a very critical moment, I think, for the prosecution. I think her entire testimony, where she seemed unsophisticated and naive, I think that was a pretty good win for the prosecution. But of course, there's always two sides to every witness. And we obviously saw her personality kind of change a little bit as the questioning continued, especially when the defense took over. I do want to give a warning before we play this next audio. This is obviously a very graphic case, a very graphic information that we're getting through all of this. We do want to play you the moments that Juliana explains what happens next. She explains the moments that she says Brenden stabs Christine. Again, it is graphic, so a warning there.
He got on top of her, and that's when I first saw him stab her with a knife.
Where on her body was he stabbing her?
Her neck.
And were you able to see whether or not he stabbed her one time or more than one time? When I first saw that happening, I ran to the other side of the bed, and I was just crouching down on myself and covering my ears and covering my eyes, and a few times I looked, and I was able to see him stabbing her, and he would stab, and other times he would hold the knife in a position how that was.
A pretty vivid description, and you even mentioned to me before that gesture that they had her make. Why is that relevant in all of this? Remember, the jury, right before she took the stand, heard from the medical examiner. The medical examiner, in gruesome detail, explained these various knife wounds to her neck. I think she used the words rapidly fatal, or words along those lines. So now the jury has heard that from a neutral witness, a medical witness, an expert witness, and then right on the heels of that testimony comes this eyewitness testimony, which basically corroborates what the medical examiner said. So the motion, the verbiage, the drama of it all is important,
But what is really important, I think, to the jurors is, wow, now she's corroborated what we've heard from a neutral medical examiner.
Okay. Obviously, it just continues to get graphic as she goes into more detail. We do want to play this next clip for you where she talks about how things escalated through all of this. Take a listen if you can.
That Joe is moving. He was moving, and Brenden, he doesn't have any reaction to that whatsoever. And I just start telling him, he's moving, he's behind you, and that's when I fired the shot too.
That's when could you say that again?
I fired
And when you say you fired what?
a gun
The gun that was where?
in my that I had in my pocket, the handgun.
Did you hit anyone?
Yes,
Who'd you hit?
Joe.
Obviously speaks to why she's here, why she's a part of this case, and even on that stand and also facing charges herself. There is one part though, the part about the gun and where the gun was. You know, we've heard some confusing testimony at this point about, was the gun in the safe? She has testified that she was given the gun that morning, but then she also testified that Brenden told her to go to the safe to get to the gun. So where was the gun?
Yeah, I think this is where the problems start for the prosecution, because for the first good portion of her direct testimony, when she's taking to the gun range and they look at the chats and they're talking about Joseph coming over, that all seemed more confirmed and corroborated. But now we have kind of an interesting separation where the prosecutor has treated her and has put her up in front of the jury as kind of a naive, unsophisticated person who seemed kind of, in a way, surprised by the ferocity of this attack, not only on Mr. Ryan, but on Miss Banfield. But now, all of a sudden, here she is with a gun in her pocket, and she's shooting somebody who has already been probably fatally injured. And this is where I think the prosecutor lost a few points here, because now she's gone from a naive, unsophisticated babysitter to someone with an armed handgun in her pocket who shoots a man literally on the last breaths of his life. This is the difficulty I think that the prosecutor had, even in their direct, in portraying her in a certain way.
What do you think, so you believe that they were trying to portray her still as innocent. Do you think that it was helpful to have her get up there and say, I did this? Or you just have to have her up there?
You have to have her up there to say that, because ostensibly that is what took place. But that was the moment, remember, trials come down to kind of moments in time where she kind of lost some of that innocence that I think the prosecutor was trying to portray her as during the rest of the direct testimony.
All right, the next thing you're going to hear is extremely, extremely graphic, so a warning there. And she's talking about the moments following, and this is where she really paints this horrible picture of Brendan Banfield. Let's take a listen.
After I shot him, he falls back. And
Did you see Brenden touch Joe's body after you shot him?
touching, no.
Did you see him interacting with Joe or Christine after you shot Joe?
Well, he was still stabbed in Christine, and he got her blood in a handful of blood, and he starts dripping on Joe's body.
Here, you know, is this credible to a jury? Do you think they're looking at this and they're believing her, or You know, what do you think the jury's thinking in this moment?
Difficult to say,
Yeah.
because now we've bounced from naive and unsophisticated to a killer to now being shocked by what's happening. So this is a real up and down, ebb and flow type of witness all in the last few minutes. Is the jury believing all of it? Probably not. Are they believing enough of it for a conviction? Then that's to be determined. Certainly an ebb and flow with this witness. The question is whether the ebb is good for the prosecution or the flow is good for the defense.
And obviously they're trying to paint this image that Brenden is trying to now frame Joseph Ryan. Okay, thank you so much, Frank.